Shawn Persinger here. I am the composer and guitarist on the song that you just heard by Boud Deun. For some of you, you know that I was in a progressive rock, fusion, whatever you want to call it. I actually thought we were kind of an instrumental punk rock band back in the 1990s, as 94 to 99. And I always thought of, like I said, Boud Deun was a combination of bands like No Means No and Minor Threat and the Minutemen, combined with King Crimson, the Mahavishnu Orchestra, and Zappa. That's really kind of the big influences, though there were literally hundreds of influences on me for that band. I'm just speaking for myself because we had great other musicians in the band who all brought their individual influences to that group. And I'm really grateful that some viewers have requested a Boud Deun guitar lesson. So I did this particular play along to start. And I thought now I would break down some of the individual licks, and I thought a nice place to start would be the Boud Deun piece Churches, because Churches is a long form piece that I wrote. It's 38 minutes long. And the obvious points of reference would be, especially if you're into progressive rock, something like Yes's Close to the Edge or Jethro Tull's Thick as a Brick. But in fact, and those were inspirations, but the biggest inspiration for me was actually Leonard Bernstein's West Side Story. Specifically, I actually have two copies of this, the scores here, the symphonic dances of West Side Story. Hopefully some of you are familiar with West Side Story in general, but it's the symphonic dances that absolutely changed my life, because it's several of the big dances scored for orchestra. So there's no vocals in this particular piece. And I heard this and was absolutely blown away. To this day, it is still, I think, the greatest piece of music ever written. Absolutely fantastic, incredible. If you want to talk about music that's progressive, I think it was arranged in the early 60s. It does not get more progressive than this. Absolutely astounding piece of music. Last point I wanted to make was I mentioned Close to the Edge and Thick as a Brick at the beginning of this. The one thing I did not want to do for this progressive rock fusion cliche was have a 38-minute piece of music. So what Churches actually is 16, I think there's 16 short pieces. So some of them are ridiculously short, about 50 seconds. Some are 2 minutes. I think the longest one is about 3.5, 4 minutes long. So they're little pieces that fit together as a movement rather than one big long piece, which was very difficult for me. I remember when Thick as a Brick came out on CD and it's this one 50-minute track, kind of drove me nuts. I think it might still be that way. I should double check. So I'm going to break down individual parts in the Belfast that you just heard and explain where the influences came from West Side Story, but also from Eric Johnson, the guitar player, and in this particular piece, also a little bit of the Simpsons theme song by Danny Elfman, specifically the outro music. So let's take a look. So let's start with the opening riff, which is this. Play that again. Like I said, West Side Story. Opening of West Side Story sounds like this. Now, if you play them back to back, you can hear there's a little bit of resemblance. One of my ideas here is that you get inspired by something and then you just manipulate it a little bit. I always loved that the Beatles were very good about acknowledging where they stole a bass line here from Chuck Berry or a drum beat there from Arthur Alexander, and that's what I'm trying to do in this lesson. So that's straight up from Leonard Bernstein. Later, I play that melody up an octave, 2 octaves, in other Churches pieces, and I use that fingering. Now that fingering is a little bit awkward, but I was really into Eric Johnson at the time, and that's a very Eric Johnson type of awkward fingering. That's one of the things Eric was really good about, is using normal notes but with unexpected fingerings. So that's the same riff as this, but up 2 octaves. And I use that theme throughout the Churches pieces. Next melody, the one that I play on the guitar, sounds like this, looks like this. Later I play it in this position. Play that again. That riff, lick, melody, motif, whatever you want to call it, is all about the symmetry. Look at it. It just goes 6, 7, 5, 6, 4, 5. You slow it down, it's got a little Pink Panther in it. I'm into symmetry. That's an easy way to write things on the guitar, and they're easy to remember when they're symmetrical. We'll do another symmetrical lick. Let's do it right now. That at the end of the main riff, I play this. And you can see the symmetry. 3, 2, 3, 2, 3 at the end. And that really is just about the symmetry of the lick. Sounds good, happens to sound good. Of course, it has to sound good too. It can't just be about symmetry. But a lot of times that symmetry works to your advantage melodically. Next phrase I want to show you, I play another melody. And in that phrase, in that melody, I play this lick. That is an octave displacement lick. If I don't displace it, it sounds like this. A lot of chromatic. F, E, B, B flat, A. Octave displacement. If you're interested in octave displacement, it's one of my most popular videos. You can find it on the channel below. Next part. This is one of my all-time favorite licks that I've written, and this is the rhythm guitar part during the violin melody. Let's see, I'm gonna slow this down a little bit. This is tricky to play. A little harmonic there at the end. I almost don't want to tell you where I stole this from. This is the outro pizzicato strings of the Simpsons theme. If you're not familiar with it, go YouTube it right now. It is absolutely brilliant, and you'll immediately hear the point of reference. Those are just a few of the many influences. What did we have in there? We had Leonard Bernstein, we had Eric Johnson, we have octave displacement, and we've got the Simpsons, a little bit of everybody in there. I need to point out too that churches and Boud Deun was always an ensemble, right? It wasn't just about the guitar, the bass playing, the drumming, and the violin in that band. I really didn't know how good I had it with those musicians because it was one of my very first groups, and those players are absolutely fantastic. Go back and listen to what I just played, but pay attention to the bass, to the violin, to the drums. It's just amazing drumming, amazing everything on that particular piece. And all of churches, everybody brought their own background and style to that particular album. Really, really happy with that record. So it's not just about the guitar playing. One other thing to point out too is in that Belfast, you might have noticed, hopefully, there's no improvisation. Every single note is written. I was very specific about what I wanted on that. It was a little bit liberal on what other people could bring. But a lot of times I wanted a snare drum in a certain place. I wanted it in a certain place. There are improvisations in the church's piece, but most of that music is composed. To that end, another big influence on that, this idea of having more composed music than improvised music, would be Chick Corea's Hymn of the Seventh Galaxy album, the Return to Forever record. That was a really great fusion record, but man, the solos are short and the compositions are long. That's really where my heart lies, is the composition. All those influences come together to make the Boud Deun churches, which you'll find on the Stolen Bicycle. So I hope the Boud Deun fans out there learn something new about this particular piece, and maybe we've got some new Boud Deun fans too. And if people are still interested, I'll do some more Boud Deun lessons in the future, because there's definitely a lot of ideas to mine and show you, again, the specific points of reference and inspirations that I got for that composition. Thank you so much for watching. As always, share, subscribe, comment, and we'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.